Stangelisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1GV, Whiskey 1 Good Vibrations. Frequently, I get asked a question that's very hard to answer, but I'm going to do my best. I've tried before, but I'm going to try to put a different twist on it this time. The question is, how do you learn the code? And they're referring, of course, to the Morse code, CW mode in amateur radio. It used to be required for an amateur radio license. You had to learn the code. 5 words a minute for novice and technician, 13 words a minute for general and advanced, and 20 words a minute for the old-fashioned extra class license. Now, of course, you don't have to learn the code at all, but a lot of people still are interested and they ask me this question: how do you learn the code? And it's kind of like asking someone, how do you learn to swim? Well, when I was first getting interested in ham radio at about age 10, I didn't get my license till I was 13 in 1966, but I learned to send first. It was on a code practice oscillator, just something that generated an audio tone whenever you pressed down the lever of a manual Morse code key. And I still have that key. It was made by a company called Ameco, A-M-E-C-O, and I simply learned the letters by dots and dashes, by rote. There was nothing fancy or magical or mysterious about it. It was just plain practice. And I learned to send. Finally, out of the textbook, I could send at a good 10, maybe 15 words a minute, Morse code. But I couldn't receive to save my life. I could not translate incoming Morse code into text. It's like kind of like navigating a stream. It's pretty easy to navigate the Mississippi River going all the way from Lake Itasca in Minnesota down to the Gulf of Mexico. You just keep letting the current carry you. That's like sending the code. But when receiving the code, suppose someone told you in New Orleans or on the Mississippi Delta, now that you come down here from Lake Itasca, find your way back up. Not only must you paddle or row or motor your boat upstream against the current, you also have to find your way uh, amidst all kinds of different mistaken routes that you could take. You could end up on the Missouri River and end up somewhere out west. You could end up on any number of tributaries. But to get to Lake Itasca in Minnesota, you'd need a map, and you'd almost certainly not make it on the first try. You might spend the rest of your life trying. Much, much more difficult. That, in comparison, is what receiving the Morse code or learning to receive the Morse code might be like. I learned to send first, and then I learned to receive, or as they say, copy the code. You write down the letters, letter by letter by letter. In fact, sometimes random character groups were used. You might read some of the old ARRL instruction manuals on how to learn the code, or even some of the old military instructive films on how to learn the code. You had to do that in order to be a soldier back in the olden days, whenever that was, back before we had those huge wars, which changed the entire landscape of the military now. And now we're on a point where we can annihilate another country by means of an electronic button, but that being as it may. If you want to learn to receive the code, again, it's just plain old practice, but most people find receiving or copying more difficult. I've often wondered whether one ought to learn to receive rather than to send. first and then learn to send the code. Sort of like a foreign language. What good is it to be able to speak in another language if you can't understand what the other people are saying? But if you can understand what they're saying, it's a lot easier to transcribe something into understandable speech. So it might be that learning to receive first would be the preferable method, but that isn't the way I did it. So you're asking me a question that I can't answer. There was a time once when I could copy the Morse code, literally write down by hand all of the characters as they came in at about 30 words a minute. Past that, I just couldn't handwrite fast enough, and I resorted to the use of a typewriter-like device called a mill, which produced all uppercase letters and was designed specifically for copying the code. And I did manage to get my 40-word-a-minute certificate from the ARRL in one of their qualifying runs. And that's another story. But I did it because I liked it. I enjoyed the code. And I think maybe that's one of the real keys. If you feel like you have an obligation, you set a goal for yourself, you don't really like it. It's like you're going to like anchovies. You're just going to decide to eat them because they're good for you or something, or sardines. You're going to eat sardines because supposedly they're good for you, but you practically can't even hold them down. Don't do it. If you don't try to learn the code unless you enjoy the code, unless you really want to get into it because you think it'll be fun, or you've seen other people that had fun doing it, or you actually enjoy the mere act of transcribing dits and das into written characters and vice versa. And eventually it'll just come to you. It's like learning to swim. You don't say you put one arm in front of the other, and the instructions are, you bend your elbow a certain way, and the mechanics of the water fluid as it flows past your body, and all of this. Imagine a textbook. Read this textbook, and by the end of the book, you'll know how to swim. Baloney. You have to get in that water and do it, and that is really the only way to learn the code, is to just let it grow on you. Enjoy it and let it grow on you, and how the process occurs. The biological, psychological, and mechanical details, forget about all that. And if anybody ever tries to dissuade you, acts snobbish towards you, if any ham radio operator ever acts snobbish towards you, says, "Oh, that's very difficult," and this and that, just write them off. Forget about that person. Don't even give them the time of day. If you want to learn the code, learn the code. And the way to learn the code is to enjoy it until you just know how to do it by instinct. That's it. That's the way to do it. And that's all I can say from over 50 years of experience with it. Just do it. Stan Gibilisco, W1GV. Da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da. Saying 73 and so long, which, of course, translates in the code to a nice, crisp da-da-da-da-da-da.